This was the year that the king, who was now Alfonso III, was forced by his own family at gunpoint, or I should say sword point, to abdicate the throne and divide Asturias into 3 parts, of which, in the year 924, one of the newer states, Leon, managed to conquer the other 2 and establish the Kingdom of Leon. The Reconquista was beginning to warm up, but if you read Sun Tzu, he'll tell you that the first thing you need to do is establish a justifiable cause for fighting. And again, having a super powerful militant saint like Santiago Matamoros helps this along nicely. Catlas goes into the method of how the historians of that time galvanized the people and established the justification for the Reconquest. Quote, "The histories from the era of Alfonso III and those composed in the 11th century and later were written by foreign clergymen who had an explicit commitment to supporting the political supremacy of the Leonese monarchy. They happily invented histories, forged documents, concocted genealogies in order to frame the history of Spain in terms of the grand Christian-Muslim conflict. These histories conceived of the world in terms of celestial struggle. Their language was biblical and their rhetoric apocalyptic. For them, the Christians of Spain were the true Israel, a people chosen by God but cast down for their disobedience and sin, and who were now called on to reclaim their rightful place through inner piety and earthly battle against the infidel." Now, Catlas goes on to explain even more. Quote, "The narrative that they crafted, one of an eternally united Spain, defeated by foreign Muslims but then gloriously reclaimed through a process of crusade and reconquest, is no less false than the legends of Clavijo, Santiago, and Pelagius. But in its dramatic simplicity and self-affirming moralization, it has exercised an incredible appeal both in Spain and elsewhere." End quote. The history of Leon dates back to Roman times. The city was founded as a military outpost by the Roman Legio Septima Gemina. As such, she had city walls and fortifications and made a natural forward base, not to mention a good capital. She was incorporated into Asturias in 742, but as mentioned became a state of her own when Asturias was partitioned. Now it would be under her new and somewhat belligerent king, Ordoño II, that she would fight and eventually overrun her Christian neighbors, and thus unify northwestern Spain. But it wasn't going to be until 931, under Ramiro II, that Leon began to really rise to prominence. Ramiro II pushed her borders east, nearly to the Pyrenees, and took the city of Burgos and the surrounding land. This land would soon be known as the County of Castile. Much more on that in just a little bit. Ramiro was a prominent military figure, and the people of Al-Andalus would affectionately refer to him as the Devil. You see, it was under his administration that he went toe-to-toe with the Muslims of the south. In 939, the emir, now Caliph of Cordoba, led a massive army into the north to teach the Christian kingdoms a lesson. This caliph was none other than Abd al-Rahman III, one of the greatest rulers of Al-Andalus, and at the time was riding high on his military successes. In fact, he was so confident that he was leading his own men personally on campaign. Abd al-Rahman III had unified most of Al-Andalus at this point and had been victorious during his famous Muez campaign about 20 years earlier. It was during this campaign that he not only torched Pamplona, but also wrecked the combined forces of Leon and Navarre. He was now in the north to essentially finish the job. But Ramiro II was not one to be pushed over very easily. He set up an ambush, and the caliph, who felt a little too secure in his supremacy, in fact, he even called his campaign omnipotence, rode right into the trap. At the Battle of Simancas in 939, the Leonese King destroyed the Muslim army and came within a hair's breadth of killing the caliph himself. It was due to victories like this that Leon was able to expand. She now encompassed the southern portion of the Duero River Valley. Again, it was a bit of a wasteland, but whichever way you look at it, the border between Cross and Crescent was moving south. and in the process, the lands of Al-Andalus had been diminished. However, that all said, the Reconquista was then going to be put on hold for the next 100 years. Abd al-Rahman III came to power in the year 912. He inherited a land that was on the verge of collapse. After a series of, well, how else can you say it, stunning military campaigns, he restored his emirate to military power and ushered in a golden age for his economy. In 929, he declared himself Abd al-Mu'minin, which meant Commander of the Faithful. Hence, he made himself Caliph and turned his emirate into a caliphate. Al-Andalus was transformed under his leadership from a regional power to an international one, and regarded by some historians as the superpower of Western Europe. This was a time when Cordoba rivaled Constantinople and Baghdad in population and sophistication, and was regarded by the court of the Holy Roman Empire as the ornament of the world. This was a time when Abd al-Rahman III and Constantine VII of the Byzantine Empire had an unusually warm and close relationship with exchange of diplomats and knowledge. In fact, if you ever go to the Great Mosque of Cordoba, you can see Arabic inscriptions that are created using Byzantine craftsmen with imported Byzantine mosaic. This was a period where Abd al-Rahman's son, Al-Hakam II, created a library that held, it was said, 400,000 books. But this was also a time when the Caliphate of Cordoba held supremacy over the peninsula, savagely putting down rebellion when she had to, and terrified the Christian kingdoms of the north, who she raided with near impunity. When the usurper Al-Mansur took control of the Cordoban government, he only intensified the strength of the army and brought Al-Andalus to the pinnacle of her military prowess. During his reign, he led over 50 campaigns. In 985, he left Barcelona a burning pile of rubble, and in 997, he breached the sanctity of Santiago de Compostela deep within Galicia. While he was there, he demolished her cathedral and stole the sacred shrine's bells. As Professor Catlas masterfully puts it in his book, the Caliphate at this point held the Christian kingdoms by the bells. But in the end, just as massively did the Caliphate rise, so did she fall. Extensive internal upheaval, persistent rebellions, and a disaffected populace brought down the mighty state in a fury. And by the year 1031, the Caliphate was abolished and replaced by a fragmented mess of competing and petty Taifa states. It was time now for the Christian kingdoms to rise to predominance once again, and in the northeastern part of the peninsula, a small Christian enclave would seek her destiny.